Molly, your book on the Speaker, Pelosi by Molly Ball, I can't wait to read it. Doesn't come out for a few months, but you've been studying her, reporting on her. Why is she holding up the articles of impeachment?
Well, what she has said is what she just said in that clip, that she needs to see what the Senate process is before she can decide who from the House to appoint to manage this. But this really was not something that a lot of people saw coming. And having studied her, I know she often has a trick up her sleeve, but she never telegraphs it in advance. So this was kind of a surprise move. It was something some partisans had been speculating about, but hadn't gotten a whole lot of traction until she did it. And, you know, now that both the House and Senate are out for a couple of weeks, she's going to see what the president's reaction to this is and what the public's reaction to this is. I think it's conveniently timed to create this sort of space for both sides to stew a little bit and see where the momentum is. Because, you know, she believes, you know, the most important word in the Speaker's vocabulary is leverage. And she believes she has leverage in this situation because the president wants a trial to, in his view, exonerate him. And McConnell has actually, you know, laughed at this idea. He says, you don't have any leverage in this situation because we don't want to do this anyway. So, if, you know, you make us not do something we don't want to do, that's fine. But we know that the White House, the president, does want a trial. And so she does have a little bit of leverage, and we'll see whether she gets any response.
Phil, what kind of trial, though, does President Trump want at this point? And Molly said the White House could be stewing. Is President Trump stewing? And in that situation, this pause, could he actually end up saying to Democrats, I'll provide some more documents and more witnesses?
President Trump's been stewing for 3 years, so he's always stewing, but especially about this because, as Molly said, he wants the trial. He wants to be exonerated, but not just to be exonerated and acquitted, technically in the Senate, but he wants defenders to come forward and put on a show and defend him for his conduct. He also wants Republicans in the Senate to drag forward Democrats and give them a taste of what he feels like he experienced on the House side. So he wants Chairman Adam Schiff from the House to be dragged before the Senate and questioned by Republican senators. He wants Hunter Biden, the former vice president's son, brought forward into the Senate. There's back and forth negotiations going on right now between the White House and Leader McConnell and his office about these witnesses because McConnell has been opposed to having witnesses. He thinks it's too risky. Trump has long wanted some, and we'll see over the holidays whether they can find some equilibrium.
Well, and I think the risky thing for the Speaker here is that she, as in many of these cases, has a bit of a divide in her own caucus because liberal Democrats would like to stretch this out, hoping that maybe they will force some testimony by White House officials, which would be a new page in this whole drama, or that at a minimum they create this impression that the Senate trial will be a sham, what Republicans said the House impeachment process was. But there are moderates in the Democratic caucus, 30 of them who come from districts that President Trump won in 2016, who would just as soon get this over with. Go to the Senate, see it to the end, have the outcome that we all know is coming, which would be a vindication of some kind of President Trump, and then let them move on to their 2020 elections talking about other things. So I think the Speaker has competing interests here that she's trying to balance, and that's not easy in this case.
And there seem to be competing interests on the Republican side. As we've been talking about, Leader McConnell has dismissed witnesses so far. The White House is thinking about calling people like Chairman Schiff and Hunter Biden. Where does this end up, Aisha, based on your reporting?
Well, you know, what was interesting this week is talking to people in the White House when these articles were held up. The idea was like, oh, this makes Nancy Pelosi look so bad. This gives into the idea that this was all political. Why, if this is such an urgent threat, why not go ahead and send them over? But then you have the president send that tweet that says he wants a trial immediately. And so you can see why she probably does want to hold up a bit. I think what you're going to see and what I'm sure what Senator McConnell will be trying to do is trying to convince President Trump that it is not in his interest to have these witnesses come forward, and that if you try to call Hunter Biden and all these other people, that this could go badly for the White House, and that they will try to defend him, and they're making the case. And I think that's probably why you have McConnell coming out saying he's not impartial, and Lindsey Graham and all these people being very defensive of the president because they know he needs to hear that, and that's what he wants. But I don't think they want to give in on this having witnesses.
And it may be up to some of these senators, Republicans, the moderates, Senator Murkowski, Senator Collins, Senator Romney, and others on the fence on the Democratic side, like Senator Jones of Alabama. Who are you watching as they set the rules for this Senate trial? They need a 51 vote threshold to set any kind of rule when it comes to witnesses.
Yeah, I mean, all of the ones that you just named, I think, are going to be, if there are swing votes. But what you see Senator McConnell really telegraphing is he doesn't think there is such a thing as a swing vote. He thinks everybody's mind is made up. And I think by saying that so frequently and so definitively, he's trying in a way to make that the reality, right? If he can convince his own caucus that this is where they are going, that this is essentially a fait accompli, then I think he feels he's minimizing the waffling that some of those moderates might feel. But as you said, there are some moderates in the caucus who may at some point have cold feet about this. What we saw in the House, though, was that even the moderate House Republicans, even the House Republicans who have had questions about President Trump's conduct, in the end fell in line and were convinced by the president's defenses.